Oh, thanks. Thanks, Mark. I'm just curious, are you involved in any kind of long-term experiments going forward to test your body and the effects of the long-term space flights on you? And also just curious about your thoughts on when the Russian crew came up in the yellow and blue suits. There's a lot of talk about that down here. I'm just curious if that's something you guys talked about up there. Thanks.
Okay, so the first question was about, can you repeat the first question again?
Yeah, just if you're involved in any experiments long term to study the effects of your mission on your body.
So all of the U.S. astronauts that go to space are a small group of people, and there's data gathered from astronauts throughout their entire lives. I'm sure because my experience is a little bit different, there might be some different uses for that. But I fully expect for the rest of my life to be getting checked out, and that information hopefully will be useful. As far as the yellow flight suits, I think the folks that wore them had no idea that people would perceive that as having anything to do with Ukraine, because they chose those because all three of them happened to be associated with the same university, and those are the school colors for that. I think they were kind of blindsided by it.
Let's take a question from Andrea Leinfelder with the Houston Chronicle.
Hi, welcome home. One of the experiments you're participating in was eating repetitive meals to see if spaceflight changed the appeal of certain foods over time. And I'm curious, how long did you participate in the study? What did you eat? And how does it affect you mentally? How does it affect your mood? Thanks.
Great questions. Food certainly affects people's moods a lot. It's interesting. I never perceived it as a repetitive study. I actually felt like I had a tremendous variety of food. There were some requirements for me to eat a minimum amount of fish. I like fish, so they actually had to tell me to eat less fish. I had a minimum requirement for fruits and vegetables as well, and lycopene-rich foods. But all those foods are types of foods that I enjoy, so it didn't seem restrictive at all.
Okay, we have a couple of questions coming in from social media. On Twitter, one person's asking that space flights can have a negative effect on your eyesight. Have you noticed any differences with that?
It's a great timing for that question. I just got my eye exam yesterday. I'm happy to report that there's no change in my prescription. I wasn't certain that was going to be the case, but I wouldn't be surprised as just getting older that I'm going to have changes in my prescription. So for me, fortunately, there was nothing. And I think my understanding is if even the changes people might have experienced, those have been able to be recovered from so far. We are paying very close attention because there is a risk of that. And our eyes get studied very carefully. We do lots of data gathering on the status of our eyes with some very impressive equipment while we're in orbit.
All right. And we have a lot of people on Twitter asking, do you wish you had 10 more days in space to make it a full year?
Wow, interesting question. Only because it would make the sound bites shorter. That would be it. I'm very happy to be back. If it ended up being 300 days, I still would have felt really good about the mission. It was not about any record for me at all. It's just the opportunity to work with a really good sense of purpose in a job where we get to help out all of humanity. The number of days was not that important to me, and I think that helped me react to whether it was going to be comfortable with it being either a shorter mission or a longer mission like it turned out to be.
Another question from Twitter, what will the next few months look like for you? What will your rehab be like?
I've got a couple hours of rehab every day, including weekends, with some very good folks. I've been really appreciative of the fact that they're putting my recovery under such scrutiny. So that's good. There's a lot of science data to be gathered as well as I'm back here on the ground, so I'm continuing to provide samples and respond to surveys, for example. And other than that, I really haven't looked past the next couple weeks, quite honestly. I typically am busy enough in one day that staying focused on that has been plenty.
All right. Jennifer on Facebook asks, what is the biggest adjustment, physically or emotionally, when you first got to the space station and then also when you got home?
So the emotion I had when I first got to the space station was that it was shockingly familiar, being my second flight. The space station, space station living is so different from being on Earth that once you're on Earth, it's really hard to connect with your experience on the space station. So when I got back there, it felt like I was getting this amazing opportunity to relive childhood memories, something that seemed so distant, but it was there and vivid in all the details. So that was a really interesting emotional experience. And then coming back to Earth, it's shocked me over the last couple of days because in anticipation of returning to Earth after being away for so long, I really thought that I was going to carry forward with me this unique perspective of appreciation for all things novel about being on the planet. But I'm adapting so quickly, it's becoming, I'm a little disappointed with how normal it feels. I kind of want it to seem more strange being back, but I'm shocked at how quickly it's becoming normal.
All right. Well, we'll take a couple of more questions from the phone. Nick Notario with ABC 13.
Hey, Mark, question. How do you want your record-setting mission to be remembered? Do you want it to be remembered for showing how, despite what was going on Earth with the conflict, that cooperation can still exist in space, or do you want it to be remembered for contributions for what could come with deep space exploration? And then a second question, now that you're back in Houston, which is known for its amazing food, what was the first thing you did or ate once you came back to the Houston area?
Okay, so the first question, I want this 355 days to be remembered as the record that got broken. So I'm really looking forward to the next person doing something longer and us getting further and further away and exploring more. So I want this to be remembered as a stepping stone. As far as food, on the NASA aircraft that brought us back from Kazakhstan, one of my flight doctors had the makings of guacamole. And I had made it known that I really enjoy and looking forward to some good avocados. And maybe it's the fact that I hadn't had guacamole for 355 days, but that guacamole was amazing. It was really good.
That's great. All right, the next one from Robert Perlman with Collect Space. Robert, we can't hear you if you're asking your question.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you. Given your experience and looking towards the future, what crew support systems or creature comforts that you had on ISS do you think need to be on board Gateway so that when crews go there, even for short stays, they don't just survive there but enjoy the experience?
Easy answer, Windows.
That sounds good. All right, next question from Marcia Smith with spacepolicyonline.com.
Thanks so much. And my question is along those same lines. And thinking about going to Mars, and you said that your 355 days sort of gave you a new appreciation for what that would be like physically, but you also talked about the mental, being ready to do these things mentally. Could you talk about the psychological aspects of being away from your family and how you think that would feel if you were as far away from Mars and you had the time delay and the everything? What kind of advice would you give to the people who are planning how to psychologically support astronauts going as far away as Mars?
Yeah, I think in a situation where you're going to Mars and you're looking back at the Earth and you would basically be trying to pick out what looks like a faintly blue star, that's going to be challenging for human beings. That is a long, long way away, distance-wise. So anything you can do to help people feel connected with those important relationships back on Earth is going to be really important. Videos that you can send, videos that you can receive. I think messaging is going to become more and more important because it'll get harder and harder to have. It's really hard to have a conversation with the type of delays that you'd be experiencing at Mars. So, yeah, that'll be challenging. And I think we've been doing a wonderful job of identifying the challenges and coming up with solutions. So I expect that to be successful in the future too.
Okay, let's go to David Curley with Discovery Channel.
Thanks again, Mark. I asked this to Crew 4, and Christina Cook has talked a little bit about it. It's about space culture, and you talked a little bit about space station living. Can you describe what space culture, living with people in small surroundings and internationally as well, how is it different than being a regular old Earthling?
So I think space culture changes with every group of people. I think it's probably to get a really good understanding of space culture is kind of like trying to get a really good understanding of the culture of a team that's trying to do some type of expedition like going to Mount Everest. It depends a lot on the personalities of the people that you're with. So I'm very happy to say that with all of my crews on orbit, the cultures were good. They were different, though. They were different ways to approach problems, different ways to resolve conflict. But in every case, everybody was very, very supportive of each other, and that was a crucial part of it. Being able to trust each other is an essential aspect of not just what I would call space culture, but any time you have a small group of people that's going to do something very challenging, isolated apart from a lot of other people.
All right, we'll take a final question from Sophie Sanchez with Chicago Now.
Hi, welcome back, Mark. Compared to your last flight, can you share what strengths you relied on most this flight? And since I'm assuming we'll see more long-term flights, what insights and takeaway do you have for new astronauts?
Yeah, I was much better about carving out time most days, by and large most days, to meditate. And I think that really helped me be more aware of how I was reacting to things, and sometimes to just recognize that and decide to see things differently. And in general, for all of us, if we spend all day looking for the most negative things that are happening to us, it'll make our outlook on life pretty negative. And if we spend a little extra time focusing on the things to be grateful about, we'll end up feeling pretty good about things. So for me, I think noticing the times that I was reacting in a negative way and recognizing that I didn't have to do that helped me get through and recognize that, wait a minute, this is pretty cool. Even though this might be frustrating at the moment, trying to find a bag that's buried behind things and taking longer than I expected for it to take, I was still doing a pretty cool job, and I was looking for bags behind a lot of other cargo in space. So it helped out.
All right. Thank you so much, Mark, for taking all these questions today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. That's all the time we have for today. But please continue to follow updates from the International Space Station at nasa.gov/station and on social media.